The strangest thing about you is that you spent 40 years surrounded by rebellion and still refused to decorate yourself like everybody else. You listened to loud music, wore black shirts, distrusted authority, fixed your own problems, carried your own damage, and somewhere along the way you decided the most rebellious thing left was leaving your body alone. You never made a speech about it. That would ruin it. You just didn't get the tattoo. No stretched ears. No eyebrow ring from 1997 that you spent 25 years pretending was a mature engineering decision. No tribal armband, no barbed wire, no wolf, no dragon, no kanji symbol that might mean courage but might also mean discounted soup. And you're a metalhead, which makes it stranger from the outside. The world expects the aging metal guy to look like a retired pirate with 3 air fryers and a storage unit full of amplifier cables. It expects ink, silver rings, skulls, flames, something pierced, something permanently declaring war on suburban normality. But there you are in your 50s, black t-shirt, old jeans, a beard that has stopped asking permission, standing near the grill in the barbecue smoke, checking the meat like you're supervising a hostage negotiation. Bare arms, no slogan on your skin. Somebody notices eventually, usually at a cookout, when a younger guy pulls off his hoodie and reveals a sleeve full of mythology, geometry, depression, and a wolf that looks slightly disappointed. Then someone looks at you. Wait, you don't have any tattoos? And you give the standard answer. Nope. No TED Talk, no moral position, just nope. But the nope has history behind it. You weren't protected from tattoo culture. You were there when it arrived. You watched tattoos move from biker bars and military arms into malls, college campuses, music videos, office jobs, coffee shops, dating apps, and eventually onto people who looked like they'd file a noise complaint against Black Sabbath. You watched the whole thing happen in real time. You're the bridge. Young enough to have access, old enough to remember when it still meant something. You stood in the doorway, looked inside, and quietly stepped back. And here's the interesting part. For you, refusing was rarely about fear. Pain was never the obstacle. You've eaten gas station food at midnight, held a flashlight while someone shouted at an engine, worked through back pain because the thing still had to get done. The obstacle was one small question in the back of your head. Am I still going to respect this when I'm 40? That question was brutal, because 22-year-old you didn't trust 22-year-old you, and that might be the most honest thing about you. You'd already watched yourself become several different people, the kid with the house key, the teenager with the bad haircut, the guy who knew everything for about 7 minutes, the guy who briefly thought a goatee was helping. So when someone said, "Pick one image and wear it forever," you heard a trap, not freedom. You already knew what younger men usually don't. Taste changes faster than skin. You saw the waves come through. The tribal armband, the barbed wire, the lower back butterfly, the Chinese character nobody could read, the dragon, the infinity symbol, the sleeve that looked like a haunted coloring book. And you noticed something. A lot of people weren't choosing from the inside. They were choosing from the air around them. They walked into a room full of drawings, picked a personality off the wall, and called it self-expression. That bothered you, because you came from a world where you proved you belonged by knowing the thing. You knew the album tracks and which lineup mattered. You knew the difference between liking a band because the radio played them and loving it because you'd worn out the tape before half the school knew who they were. You didn't need ink to prove you belonged to the music. The music was already in the room with you when nobody else was home. To you, the body was never a canvas. It was equipment. That sounds boring until you understand how deep it goes. Your body is the thing that got you through. It moved apartments, fixed cars, worked jobs, took hits, and kept going as the only piece of gear you couldn't replace. Simple instinct. Don't mess with the equipment unless there's a good reason. You're the same guy who keeps old tools because the new ones feel flimsy, who trusts cast iron more than non-stick marketing. And this is where your childhood shows up. Because the guy at the grill with the bare arms was probably the kid who came home to an empty house. You let yourself in. You made food that barely counted as food. You figured things out before anyone explained them and learned that nobody was coming right away. That doesn't make you always happy. It makes you self-contained. You learn to regulate yourself through action. Angry, so you split wood, lifted weights, listened to Slayer loud enough to remove a few frequencies forever. Sad, so you acted normal, because there was no adult in the kitchen asking follow-up questions. That wiring built a man who doesn't reach for public symbols. So when tattoo culture says, "Show the world who you are," your whole body answers, why? Why does the world need a preview of your inner life? Why should a man who already knows who he is submit an application to be recognized by people who don't? And that's why the friend matters. He got in early. The tribal band, both ears pierced, maybe stretched a little, then a little more, because at 24 it felt like commitment. At 24 he looked dangerous in the exact way 24-year-old men want to look dangerous. Not truly dangerous, more like bar dangerous, concert dangerous. You gave him grief. Nice earring. Did them all run out of dignity? He fired back, because that's how you two showed affection before anyone called it emotional labor. Years went by. He aged, and the tattoo aged with him, but not at the same rate. The lines softened, the meaning changed. Now he's in his 50s beside your grill, watching smoke cross the yard, and he says something he'd never say in a group. "Yeah, I wouldn't get this now." And it lands, because he isn't being dramatic. There's regret in it. The quiet kind that shows up when a man realizes a younger version of himself left graffiti on the building and moved out. You say nothing for a second. Then you probably say, "Told you," because compassion has limits. But inside, something confirms what you always suspected. The future self is real. At 20, most people treat him like a rumor. At 50, he's the one paying the bills. Older you wants his back to stop hurting and the brisket not to dry out. Older you wants fewer stupid decisions showing up on the skin like receipts, because time changes the body. Time changes taste. Time changes which symbols feel serious and which ones feel like something from a mall kiosk with better lighting. You knew time was coming, so you left room. Room to pass through different versions of yourself without printing all of them on the outside. Your hands and shoulders changed. Your hair migrated, surrendered, or launched a silver rebellion. But your skin didn't become a museum of former certainty. This isn't about mocking tattooed people. Plenty of brilliant people have tattoos, and plenty of unmarked men are idiots with excellent skin. Some tattoos are earned, memorials, a name that still hurts. You respect those more than people think. What you reject is the casual inflation of meaning, the culture where every mistake gets rebranded as growth because nobody wants to say, I was 23 and thought flames were deep. You prefer the honest version. Yeah, I wouldn't get this now. That has more dignity than 1,000 over-explained meanings. You paused for 30 years. You procrastinated yourself into wisdom. You watched which symbols aged well and which ones aged like milk in a hot car, and every year the decision not to act got easier. At 35, you were relieved. At 55, you're almost amused, because now the young tattooed guy is asking about removal lasers, and you're standing there with skin you didn't have to finance twice. Because for you, the body was already marked, just not with ink. A shoulder that clicks from an old job, a scar from a dumb accident, a knee that predicts the weather better than the local news. Honest marks. They came from life, not display, and you trust them more. That's why the ink always felt a little suspicious. Too much signal, too little proof of function. A tattoo can say loyalty, but showing up proves it. A sleeve can say toughness, but staying calm when everything breaks proves it. You chose proof over signal. Competence is your mark. And maybe that's the most accurate image of you now. A man in his 50s, smoke in the air, old metal playing low enough that the neighbors can't prove anything. A friend beside you with a tattoo he half regrets and still half loves. Both of you older than you planned to be. Both still making jokes, because sincerity needs protective gear. Someone asks again why you never got one, and this time you look down at your bare arm and think about the kid with the key around his neck, the teenager with the headphones, the young man who almost walked into the shop. Then you shrug. Just never needed it. And for once, that's the whole answer.